Hi, everyone. My name is Leah, and I am a former TA here at LSAT Unplugged, and I have the honor today of interviewing Caroline Wilshusen. Did I say that your last
You
name
did.
correct, Caroline?
That was great.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And Caroline is the Associate Dean for Admissions at the University of Maine School of Law. She graduated with honors from Maine Law in 2007. And after serving as a law clerk, she entered private practice working with at-risk children and adolescents, as well as serving as executive coordinator for Maine's Access to Justice Commission. She returned to Maine Law in her current role in 2014. So again, thank you so much, Carrie, for being here to chat with us today. I know our students will find your insight very beneficial as they navigate their journey in applying to law school. So if I could just ask you to give us a little bit more background on what led you to admissions.
Well, it kind of was a surprise in my world. I was very happy doing my work with at-risk children and working with the Access to Justice Commission, but the position at my law school went empty, and a couple of my professors reached out to me and said, hey, would you think about doing admissions? And that was never something I had thought about. And then I thought about just how passionate, how much I loved my law school, and that I could be a multiplier, right? In my position, all the things that I cared so deeply about, the changes that I wanted to impact, I could bring in hundreds of me and other folks that are doing other things. And so I decided to come back, and I've been here for 8 years, and I love the work I do.
Absolutely. And just to further attest to what you're speaking, I'm a first-year law student myself, 1 month in, and one thing that all of my professors and really all of the administration at my law school just show and demonstrate how dedicated they are to serving students. And that's why, they've gone out and had legal careers and had their own practices and worked at the big firms and made a lot of money doing something else and decided to come back and be a professor of law. And I think that it just attests to the impact that, they wanted to make in the future of attorneys and the lives of future attorneys and students. And so I always love to hear the background on what leads people to admissions, because I think it is, heart is what brings you back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a joy.
So we're going to get right to nitty gritty, Carrie, and ask you what it takes to stand out amongst other talented candidates.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, academic excellence is critical, right? I mean, that's every law school admissions committee has to think about whether or not the students who are applying to their law school are going to do well in their program of legal education. So standing out academically is, of course, important. But one of the things that is really important is for you to do your homework on fit, and that you've thought about where you will do your best work and what kind of law school will meet your needs. And then you will come in with a much more honed application. It will come together better, and your interactions with the admissions staff and whatnot will be much more meaningful. So that is very impressive. And not just the fit of the law school, but also why you want to do this, right? I mean, law school is a big lift. You know this, Leah. You're at the very beginnings of understanding. And I say this to students all the time coming in. I'm like, the application process is really intense, but that's good because law school's intense. And so you should have to think very, very hard about this and really dig deep and see if you have the motivation to do this really big and wonderful journey. And if you do that work, that will come through in your application. We will see that.
And I love that you mentioned fit of the law school, because I don't have a lot of admissions officers say that, but when I do, it, as someone, again, how I started law school, and I'm here now, and I'm actually back in the same city that I did my undergrad, and to be honest, Carrie, I was bummed. I was like, oh, I wanted to go somewhere new. I wanted to be somewhere else. And thank goodness that it didn't work out that way. Because I think that the adjustment for me was a little bit easier because I'm back where I call essentially home, right? Where I called home for 4 or 5 years of my life. And so I think that that's one thing that as an applicant, I did not think about. I was applying to here, there, and everywhere. And that's probably why some of the places that I didn't get into, I didn't get in, because it was just kind of like throwing things up against the wall and seeing what stuck, right? And there wasn't an active thought process of how I would fit in that environment and in that area. So I love that you accentuated fit, because it is so true amongst, your peers, the area, how you can, accommodate yourself and where you are, how far that is from your family and your friends, your support system, because it is grueling, especially in the beginning, and the adjustment is real, and they can warn you over and over again about all of
You never listen.
right? Not to fall into. And it's not until, you're like, oh, that's not going to be me. And it's everyone. It happens to everyone, even if you don't think it's going to be you. Because
that's exactly right.
About any of that.
Right. And so for some people, like a big school is the place for them, because just kind of swimming in a big pool with all those people, that energizes them. In a big city. For other people, a small school, like we're tiny, right? So everybody knows your name, and that's the right fit for other people, and the kind of city you're living in. And as you say, is my family close? Some people need to get away from their family just so that they're not distracted by that. And some people need to be near their family. So all of these things are really important. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Carrie, what are some other factors that play a role in acceptances and decisions? I know we've kind of touched on, grades, we know the LSAT. What are a few other things, and what degree do they matter to you?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's really important to, I think, everyone in my position is you're curating a group of people, and that the students will learn from one another. And so having a wide variety of lived experiences that creates a richer classroom experience and a richer community experience for all of the students is at the forefront. And so taking the time to not pull a formulaic personal statement off the internet, but really doing what I was saying before, digging deep and thinking about why law school, why now, and what skills do I bring to the table, will let us meet you, the real you, so that we can really get a sense of who you are, and we can build or curate a class that has a beautiful range of people. So having that kind of honesty and vulnerability in your application, I think, is very, very powerful. And letting us know if you feel that you have a unique lived experience that you believe will bring a lot to your new colleagues in the classroom is very important. And then, as I say, of course, academic excellence, it's really interesting. Each piece of the application tells us a bit about your story, right? I mean, some people put so much focus on their personal statement and they don't proofread their resume, right? Or they don't build a professional resume, like they do crazy fonts, they put their picture in, things like that. It's like, no, this is professional school. So each aspect of your application comes together like a puzzle. And if it's done well, it just sings. A very mixed metaphor, but you know what I'm saying? Like each aspect tells us, and your choice in who's doing your LORs, right? You pick somebody who's a really fancy person who doesn't know you at all versus a professor who's been your mentor, who will put in a lot of energy into that. That makes a huge difference to an admissions committee.
Absolutely. And there were a couple things that I wanted to touch on that you said. And the first one was lived experience. And again, in my law school classes, my favorite part of being in law school is being in class, because it's a discussion. It's always a discussion. It's never a lecture. It's essentially you learn what you need to learn to be able to participate and know what's going on for whenever you come to class. and hearing individuals, the way that they think about something, the way that they evaluate an issue is, sometimes someone phrases something in a way that I never thought of it, or I look at it in a way that someone else didn't think of it, or there's someone in my class that's from Montana, and to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's across the country from, little old Pennsylvania, and talking about property and Indian reservations and all of these things that, some people just have so much more experience with than we do. And hearing those perspectives, you're right, it does enrich, I think, the thought processes and, evaluative minds of the rest of us. And it's not just, it's what all of you bring in, because all of you really teach one another. And I think it's really interesting that on my first day, they said that all of these people aren't your competition, they're your colleagues. And someday you're going to need to call one of them about something. So keep that in mind in how you interact with your classmates. And I think that was really smart to say, and probably very true at the same time, right?
It is very true.
I just wanted to touch on that, and I think people have this false sense of, oh, I need to go to school in this place if this is my political affiliation, or this, that, or the other thing. And it's really not, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go to a place where everyone thinks the same, or you
don't want to be in an echo chamber. You do not, because you will not be as good a lawyer on the backside if you're in an echo chamber.
Exactly.
You need to challenge how you think.
You have to understand both sides of an issue.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you might be arguing for something that you don't agree with someday. So you better learn how to see it. That's for sure. Well, Carrie, what is your application, or what is your process when you begin looking through and sifting through an application?
Right, which is now, right? So this is the beginning of the 23 cycle. So me personally, or as a committee member, or just this flow of the cycle of the applications generally? Like how do I look at an application?
You can kind of go through each one. I think that everyone has, a lot of the admissions officers that I speak with have a little bit of a different way that they go about when they start, what they look at first, maybe what they weigh in on first. And so if you want to start with, your individual process first, and then move into maybe a more generalized
cycle. Yeah. And so, every law school is a little bit different, but we have a faculty admissions committee, and each of the faculty approaches their review of an application uniquely. So I don't micromanage that process, but the way I look at an application is I always like to read the personal statement first, because that's my introduction to the candidate. That's just how I do it. And it as I say, a really thoughtful personal statement frames the entire application. And then you go to the letters of recommendation and the addenda, but that's where I begin my review, is always with the personal statement. I know some people review the CAS first because they want to get a framing of the numbers and the credentials before they go into the personal statement, but I personally like to meet the person first before I go into all those other things.
And that's assuring to me as someone who is an applicant. I know I was always worried about the funnel effect. Well, I don't have this, or maybe it's not this, or it's not this score, and that, I wasn't gonna make it through if I didn't have all of those things. Whereas I felt like my essays were really strong, and I was really excited to share what I had to say in those, and that maybe, if this was a numbers game, those essays wouldn't have even gotten looked at. So as someone who's been through the process, I appreciate the personal statement being the starting point, for sure.
Yeah, well, we're a very small school, so it's a luxury for me. I really get to spend a lot more time than many folks do. So
sure. So speaking of personal statements, does a well-written personal statement make up for a lower LSAT score? And if not, what does?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think you can put one against the other. There are a lot of things that can make up for a lower LSAT score, right? I mean, an application is the story of you, right? And as I said before, when it comes together, it's like a puzzle coming together. A really strong personal statement will help. Strong writing skills, and of course, we're going to go look and see what you did on the LSAT under the time constraints in your writing sample. We do read those to see how you do when you're alone in a room under pretty significant time constraints. A resume, right? So for some people, we know certain folks, like I was a non-traditional student myself, but non-traditional students who have been out of undergrad for sometimes a long time often score lower on the LSAT exam. And so, but then they come with this amazing, often with an amazing resume and life experience that makes the committee believe that they have the academic wherewithal to do well. And so they will get an offer. And so that LSAT score is one piece of it, but it is not the whole story.
Well, since you talked about since you talked about non-traditional students, maybe we can pivot there a little bit. What is your word of advice in terms of, those who've been out of school for a while? Should they really hone in on perfecting that resume and really have it demonstrate these advanced life experiences that they've probably lived, as opposed to those who are fresh out of undergrad? What about maybe students who are looking to transfer? What does that process look like in terms of how different is it from the initial application process? What does the admissions committee look at for those types of students?
Yeah, well, I'll do the latter first, because that's an easier call. I mean, for a transfer student, what we're going to be looking at is, how did you do in law school? I mean, that is a piece of an application that we don't have for the folks coming in for the first time. And the curriculum in the first year at most law schools is quite similar. And so if a person can do well at another law school, that is a big piece of it. But then also, we continue to look at writing. You've got to be a strong writer. You just do. That's a critical piece, and letters of recommendation, and what your reasons for transferring, right? All of those things matter. And then, also, is this going to be a good place for you? Like, is the school that you're trying to land in, is that the right fit for you, right? With respect to non-traditional students, this is, I was 42 when I went to law school. I did law school at 42 with 2-year-old twins. So I know for being a non-traditional student.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So, focusing on one piece, you've lived a big piece of that. Of course, you're going to present a professional resume, right? Of course, you're going to, the piece is going to be really taking the time on the personal statement to explain why you want to take this on now, right? But it's a huge value, having life experience like that. And again, academic excellence. Although, in some cases, with non-traditional students, it's interesting. Sometimes they've taken a while to find themselves, and so their undergraduate GPA is just not awesome, right? Because they were distracted by other things, or life was happening in other ways, and they find some purpose later in life. And then graduate school experience, right? I mean, there are just so many things that can distinguish a non-traditional student. What have they done with their life, right? So, and then telling that story, right?
And there's two things that I want to have follow-up questions about. First is that kudos to you for doing law school with 2-year-old twins. I can't even imagine. It's enough for me as, a 24-year-old with nothing else really going on, as I set it up that way. But I just can't imagine, having to balance all of that. So kudos.
Well, so here's the story. Here's the story about that, though. When you have something as big as that in your life, it forces you to organize yourself in a way that you don't when you're 24, right? And what I see, having done this for 8 years, is the people who are really successful in the classroom have a work ethic, and they're organized, right? Their time management skills are strong. That is a huge boost in law school. And so having something very major in my life, that forced me to do that very well, and it supported my success in law school.
So that's great, because I know that I picked up I did the thing that they tell you you shouldn't do. And I picked up just a very like 1 day a week job, but it helps keep me structured. On one of my weekend days, I know that I need to go work for 5 or 6 hours. And when I come home, I can have dinner, and then I need to do work, and I need to get X amount of work done because I know on Sunday I have, Y amount of work that I need to get done to prepare for Monday. So I agree that it does keep you structured. It's almost like if you have too much time, I mean, there's never too much time, but if you have too much time on your hands, it's almost like you get lazy a little bit. And then for transfer students, do you also like to see, aside from grades and the letters of recommendation, do you like to see involvement? I've heard conflicting ideas on this, just because I know my law school was like, don't get too involved your first year because you're going to be overwhelmed and you have a lot on your plate. There's always third year for that. And then I hear people talk about wanting to transfer and, you need to make sure you're involved. So I guess, is this a situational, is this it depends type of answer?
That's always the answer. That is always
I learned that very fast.
That's exactly right. That is always the answer in law school. It depends. Yeah, it does depend, right? And so everybody's got their own story coming in. So I always encourage folks to reach out to the schools that they're interested in, get to know the admissions team, get to know how they want to be interacted with, and ask these questions. I haven't thought about a person who is going into law school with the intent of transferring. That's not something that I've really thought about a lot. I would think that the most important thing would be academic excellence in the classroom.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I know that you put a little nugget in there about that the application cycle has just recently opened, or if it hasn't just opened, it will be by the end of the month typically. So in your opinion, how early should an applicant consider preparing for admissions?
Mm-hmm. Preparing? Well, just kind of doing a backward timeline, which is how my brain works. We always encourage people to apply in the fall, before the fall they want to go to law school, because that creates more opportunities for a letter of admission, for an offer of admission. So it depends. I mean, it depends on the individual and how much preparation they're going to need, right? For some people, they have done work at the undergraduate level or in their professional lives that have given them those skills that they test for on the LSAT exam, right? Like there are certain disciplines that have trained that logical thinking, and you've been working in the dense reading and all of that sort of thing. Some of those folks don't need to spend as much time preparing for the LSAT exam. And, some people have been building relationships throughout their undergraduate career with mentors and professors that are just right there, ready to write letters of recommendation for them. And then some people haven't. Some people are at giant institutions and haven't had those opportunities, and they're going to need to go find the people to write their letters of recommendation. They're going to have to write. So it depends on the individual. I think you have to do an assessment of how long you're going to need to study for the LSAT exam. Do you have people that are ready to write your letters of recommendation? It's a big decision. So I encourage people to time it in a way. We never want you to apply before you're absolutely ready to apply. It's not something to rush. I was just talking with a student today and I said, I take the long view on all of this, right? Don't rush through this. Take your time. Law school will be here. You need to be ready for law school. We're ready for you when you're ready for us. And so take the time you need to be really ready and put in a great application, and that will set you up for success.
Yes, and I think that, the earlier the better, in terms of if you're looking to apply in a cycle, right, as you kind of said, the fall before you plan on starting is the best. And I was a shotgun LSAT application girl in the very very much the 11th hour, just because that's just how life happened for me. But I always recommend to others, if you can take the LSAT in the fall and start working on all of your stuff to have it in before the new year, that's like my personal recommendation that I normally used to tell students. Just because then, okay, if an oopsie happens and you need to take the LSAT again, you can take it again in January. It's there, right? You're not rushing to get these deadlines. And obviously, the earlier, it might be a little bit easier to get in the beginning, or it might be a little bit easier to get scholarship in the beginning. And those things can be really determinative of where you end up going. I know for me, I was in the 11th hour, but I went where I got a scholarship. It did make a difference for me. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for that scholarship.
And congratulations to you. But then I would say the other benefit is, right, you'll have an answer and you've got all of that time to get yourself prepared and your life organized so that when you get to law school, you have sorted all those things out and you've created that infrastructure, that scaffolding that's going to support you to success. Yeah.
Yes. And same with terms of visiting the area. If you're not going to live on campus where you're going to live, getting acclimated with the area. I know for me, again, I was a very late applicant. And when I was accepted, I had trouble finding a place to live. And that was a stressor up until just weeks before. So that's one thing that.
Yeah, that's a hard way to start.
It's right. And then you want to be settled in when you get there, and then you're trying to settle in as you're trying to settle in school. So, just to eliminate extra stressors, the sooner, the better for all of the reasons above.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts or predictions on this coming admission cycle, maybe in relation to the past year or so?
Yeah, I think the way people are thinking about it, so there's a lot of things that we look at as predictors, and one of them is how many people are taking the LSAT exam, right? And so I think that's been a little decreased this year, so we're expecting the flow to be a little less than last year, but it's still going to be a competitive cycle, I think. So we're not going back to the time when we were at the very bottom of the application flow, and so I think it's going to continue to be a competitive cycle. So
sure. So is there a student that is the right fit? Is there such a thing as a right fit student?
Well, there are certain, it depends on the school, right? It depends. That's always the answer. So there's
always the answer.
So I will, I can speak from my school, and that's the school that I know well. And again, it's specific to, we're in Maine. It's a very, the bar in Maine is incredibly collegial. We're a very small law school. And so for us, the right fit is somebody who has a growth mindset, who really is coming in as a new colleague and understands that, doing well at the cost of someone else's success is not a way to succeed in the law school. So someone who really wants to be known and seen, right? So each law school is going to have a different right fit, right? There are certain qualities. There's no specific demographic. We have a very wide age range in our class. That's something I do quite intentionally, and life experience. So it's definitely not a paper cutter thing. So paper dolls, yeah.
So my final question to you, Caroline, is what is your favorite part about being the Associate Dean for Admissions at the University of Maine School of Law?
Well, I say this every time I get to speak with a prospective student. That is my joy. Someone who is passionate about making change, about having a positive impact in their community. It is such a powerful law degree. And I'm finding that people are doing it for really important reasons now. I mean, the motivation to go to law school is pretty profound. That is a joy to see. And so interacting with prospective students, and then I will say orientation. And I was making a joke that it's like giving birth each year to this wonderful new cohort of colleagues. It is such an amazing experience.
And yeah. I can attest to, on the first day of my orientation, we had to write down, why law school, why here? And, we answered those questions in our personal statements, but I found that even my answer had changed a little bit between that time and when I was actually there. And maybe it was a little bit more sophisticated at that point in time. Maybe it was because I had just sat through a whole day of learning and having a greater understanding of the gravity of the position that I'm now in and that I'm being set up to be in. And, hearing the different areas and sectors and positions that these individuals want to use their law degree with was just some of them were things I had never thought about or didn't know that it even existed, right? And so I think that that's really powerful. And another thing being, there are so many different areas of the law in which I like to say it's not like medical school where you go and you learn all the stuff, right? And then you come out and you specialize and you train to be in that specialty, which you stay in for the rest of your life. And law school is cool because you don't have to do that. You learn all of the stuff and you might go into a particular field and then you might be sick of it, so you go into a different one. And it's just nice to have the accessibility and the ability to do that. And I think that's pretty cool. It can be a very fluid career.
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely. And you're getting core skills that are valuable in so many realms, Yeah, that's right.
They're applicable to so many things. So additionally, to just touch on, communication, I always like to throw this in there that when you speak with an admissions committee, whether that be, you're calling to set up a tour, whether it's you've applied, right, and you were on the wait list and you've gotten a call about maybe getting off the wait list, trying to see where you're at. I think that it's even just the tone you use in an email is all really important because number one, you never know who you're talking to. I can attest that I've been on the phone with deans of law schools that I've applied to when I got off of wait lists that I didn't know they were the dean. And guess what? I didn't know they were the dean until I did this interview, one of these interviews right here. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know that voice. I know you. We talked on the phone. And they're like, yes, I remember you. And, it's like, be pleasant because you have no idea who you're talking to. I understand that it can be a really stressful time. You might be under a time crunch where you need to know an answer. Just be so kind and so open to hearing what someone has to say and so receiving and what's being told to you. Just because, again, these people don't know you, they know you on a piece of paper. And so if you're having a bad day, they don't know that that's just a bad day and they will remember. So I always just like to throw that in there, and I'm sure you can attest to that.
Absolutely. And that is just a remarkably important habit to develop throughout your professional career, right? I mean, that's being a professional. That is, taking the things that you're feeling and learning where to put it when you have to interact in a professional setting. And the law school admissions office is a professional setting. So absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice.
So Carrie, if our students want to reach out to you to get a little bit more information or reach out to learn a little bit more about Maine law, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we're, as I keep saying, we're very small. So I'm a small admissions office. You can either do, maybe I can, law admissions at maine.edu. It's all one word, law admissions at maine.edu. And honestly, my name is way too long, so I'm not going to give that to you because that would be way too much to do it. But it is me, or it's the other, we're a two-person office. And I love speaking with people. And I will say that this is a very important point, which is the people in my position are counselors. We're not gatekeepers. And that's something that's really important to remember. I don't believe everybody should come to my law school. And I don't think anybody else in my position thinks that way either. It is, we want to do that fit assessment with you. And so the folks in our office are trained to do that kind of thing and to talk to you and to support you in your success. So I encourage you to get to know the offices and really spend time with people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for all of your insight. I know it will be of great benefit to all of our students here and those who tune in to watch. So thank you again, and I wish you the best moving forward with your application process and keeping your sanity as you sort through all these applications.
And good luck to you, and congratulations for embarking on this really wonderful journey. It is exciting and it's important. So congratulations. Yeah.
It has been highly rewarding already. So I can't wait to see what the next few years hold and beyond.
Wonderful. Take care and be
Great.
well.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.